forward to the future of this country, we need to acknowledge that the model of voluntary and social provision in Ireland is somewhat unique. It developed as we were an economically unprosperous country and was developed organically to meet unmet needs by the state. And because of that, it had a sound philosophical basis that if government wasn't going to do it, it was going to be done by voluntary organisations, it was going to be done within communities. And the Celtic Tiger years was both a setback and a step forward for the voluntary sector. It was a setback in the growth of individualism. And the idea that needs could be bought, that somehow an individual had the responsibility for themselves, and the idea of community diminished. At the same time, there were more resources available to the state, and the state made more money available to non-governmental organisations. Not always, I would argue, in the most targeted of ways. The money that increased phenomenally was not the money that always went to cold-face type community and voluntary activity, and too much of it, I would argue, went to building up unnecessary bureaucracies. And what was seen as the professionalisation of the community sector often was the development and creation of jobs that were not the jobs that were needed to further and progress the aims and activities of such organisations. What we need to do now in the new circumstances, where the resources plainly are not available, is to properly recognise the role of the volunteer. Because now, when the resources are limited and lessening, we need a voluntary sector and a vibrant voluntary sector more than ever to meet ever-growing unmet social needs. And I would argue that the targeted resource approach in rewarding and recognising volunteers is where policy should be going now. We need to think of a more holistic approach. We need to think of innovative approaches like time-money systems, the use of a tax relief system to recognise work activity done by people within their local communities and in voluntary organisations. And the further element of a holistic approach is the whole participatory democracy element of community work. I think one of the sadder aspects of the shortened life of this particular government has been the failure to release what was an almost agreed white paper on local government. But even that, if it had been released, I think wouldn't have gone far enough. We need to define structures of government at the most local level that are appropriate in terms of geographical area and population size. If we're talking about reinventing Ireland in terms of our values and our cultures, the structures that we have that reflect those are the strongest that are in need of reform. The idea of a county system with counties of different sizes, which themselves were a construct of British administration, I would argue, are something that's badly in need of reform. The House of Parliament that I sit in, Shannon Éireann, is largely elected by county councillors of differing size, where the vote of a councillor in Leitrim has vastly more strength than the vote of a councillor in Dublin. So these type of variants need to change. And I would argue that what we need is a kind of a district council approach to local government, because if there's a more ready identification with the close community that people live in, the role of the voluntary organisation becomes ever more important. The other area that I think NGOs and voluntary organisations can play in terms of bringing about a fairer society is the debate that needs to be had on terms of integrating our tax and social welfare systems. Because if anything defines the economic debate we're having at the moment, it's the existence of different Irelands. And I'll just develop this point in conclusion. The idea that there is an Ireland that has resources and begrudges a contribution towards, through the taxation system, towards meeting the overall needs of the country, and at the same time there is another Ireland that receives this largesse, is something that we need to challenge. All of us in this country should be contributing to our taxation system. All of us should be benefiting from systems of welfare. And until we get rid of the idea that there are different classes of people who pay tax and receive money from the state, then we will be poorer as a society, we will not be able to progress. The people, I believe, who are best able to progress that particular debate are the people within the non-governmental organisations and voluntary organisations in Ireland. And as we move into this debate, in what will probably be the most historic election that we've had in this country, I hope that that's a role and a debate that many people in this room will help progress. Thank you.